Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lisa Williams, and I am the Associate Curator at the New Britain Museum of American Art, one of, if not the oldest museums dedicated exclusively to American art. And I'm thrilled that you can join us today for a discussion about an age-old American tradition, the cross-country road trip. And we're tremendously fortunate to be joined by three remarkable artists: Shantell Martin, whose first career retrospective is currently on view at the New Britain Museum of American Art. Shantell is recognized as one of the most innovative artists working today, who follows the mantra to draw on everything, as we'll explore in today's talk. Laksmi Hedemark, a director, writer, and actor, also joins us. In 2017, she began her career as a director, collaborating with Shantell Martin and Charlie Nordstrom on Concrete Night, a film that is currently on view at the NBMAA. Laksmi has received acclaim for her narrative films Hey Stranger and In the Room. And finally, we're also joined by Theo Coulombe, a Connecticut-based photographer who has exhibited at the Imperial War Museum, the Aldrich Museum, Tang Teaching Museum, among others. After living in Brooklyn for 23 years, Theo moved to Sharon, Connecticut, where he opened Standard Space Gallery in 2017. This program accompanies our current exhibition, New Now, Shantell Martin, which is part of a major initiative launched by the New Britain Museum of American Art in January of 2020, entitled 2020 20 Plus Women at NBMAA, which celebrates the invaluable contributions of women to the arts and seeks to increase representation of their work in our galleries. We are very grateful to our presenting sponsor, Stanley Black & Decker, with additional support from Bank of America. So with that, I am thrilled to begin our program and welcome Shantell, Laksmi, and Theo, whose images you see here in this photograph, which is from a moment in their travels in 2017. Before we launch into our discussion involving all of you, I want to provide just a little bit of context for those who have joined our program today, but who have perhaps not had an opportunity to visit Shantell Martin's exhibition at the New Britain Museum of American Art. And so here we are, just to provide a little bit of an orientation. This is the Bachelor Gallery in the New Britain Museum of American Art, with nearly 2 decades of work by Shantell Martin, including drawings, photographs, a large-scale mural, a 16 by 40 foot site-specific mural that you see here, as well as myriad collaborative works with fashion designers, technology innovators, and also with other artists. So in a side gallery here in A.W. Stanley Gallery, you find a suite of photographs that are the result of a road trip, the road trip that will be the subject of our discussion today. And so you see at left 2 photographs of Shantell creating work on the road in the American landscape. Another view. And here we are with a final work. So we want to talk about kind of how this all began. So would it be helpful to just launch into this video that kind of takes us back in time?
Yeah, let's just launch the video. Let's jump in.
All right, let's do it.
Going down memory lane here. We lost the sound.
I guess the sound is gone, yeah.
But there I am, me, very young Shantell Martin, drawing on the
Painting
wall.
away on my brand new cinder block wall to take the pain of losing my view.
Yeah. There's a young Theo, camera in hand.
That was my introduction to Montana paints.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. This was the second piece that I'd ever done with spray paint.
Really?
Mural, yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it turned out pretty good.
That's a better view than just
Cinder block.
cinder block.
Jesse English. Ego Puppets.
No, little shout out.
Yeah.
All right, I think that sets the stage beautifully, but we might want to provide a little bit of context about what we just saw. Can you take us back? What's happening here?
Yeah, what was that?
Let's see. We had met like a year or so before, I think, when you were still
A few years before, actually.
Yeah, a few years before. You were still in transition between Tokyo and New York, and I had my photo studio, and we had a great view outside of the photo studio windows, and then a cinder block wall had been built, and I was trying to think of a way to mitigate the depression of looking at cinder block, and Shantell came to mind, and I called her up and I asked her if she was interested in doing a mural, and we struck a deal, and it worked out very, very, very well. That mural brought a smile to my face every time I walked by it for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years that I was living and working in that space, because I was literally living and working in that space. I was there all the time. And that started kind of like, we had already kind of connected on the Japanese front in some respects when we first met. The idea that she came to mind, it was like organically came to mind. I think we can probably say our whole friendship has been rather organic in terms of like this kind of like in an offhand way working together or coming to, you know, like bringing something together. It was always just great. So that mural represents that first time that we really connected. And shortly after that, we had an exhibit in the photo studio where I was running this program to offset the commercial studio I was running. I had a program called One Night Only Art, and I would feature artists for literally one night because you couldn't keep artwork up during photo shoots the next day. So shortly after that, Shantell came in and did some live drawing to cello music by a cellist. So what was her name?
Yeah, so I did, I was collaborating a lot with a cellist then at the time called Anna Corner. We had a band together called MMP, my first project, and Anna would do cello and I would do vocals and beats. But we did a show actually at Theo Space, and lots of people couldn't come because there was a storm or something. What was
right?
That?
Yeah, there was a snowstorm. Yeah, that's right.
There was a snowstorm, you know, one of these epic snowstorms, and only a few people could make it, but everyone that got there was kind of hunkered down and didn't really want to leave.
Awesome.
But, you know, I think like Theo was saying, you know, that mural put a smile on his face, and Theo's always been someone that's put a smile on my face. And so I think then we've had this organic kind of work, collaborative kind of relationship since then. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Where did we go? We started doing a lot of regular practical work together after that. And I was documenting. You'll have to excuse, my camera is going to move a little bit because my cat has decided to take up residence on my laptop. Beckett, be a good one. And we were doing a lot of practical work together where I was documenting Shantell's copious amounts of work that she was using. And we're talking days in the studio photographing beautiful long scrolls of drawing. And our relationship just kept developing like that. And, you know, over time in history, there was a moment where Shantell moved away to San Francisco, and we stayed connected in the way that we could, which is, you know, online. But she came back from San Francisco, and there was this moment where she realized she had to pretty much get all of her artwork that she'd created in San Francisco. And how long were you there?
So I was in San Francisco for about 6 months, and, you know, I don't know anyone out there that goes and does an artist residency or goes to stay somewhere, you know, for even a month, you accumulate a lot of stuff. So after 6 months, you know, I was working doing an artist residency at Autodesk, and I accumulated a lot of work, canvases, sculptural pieces, but I kind of left it there and then came back to the East Coast. And so I guess we're jumping in there already, kind of the origins of all of this. But so Theo's been photographing, my inventory for years, all of my art, hundreds and hundreds of pieces. And so Laksmi, Theo, and I were in the studio working on the inventory, photographing it, measuring it, doing condition reports on it. And I remembered, I was like, Theo, I have all of this artwork on the West Coast, but I don't drive and Lakshmi doesn't drive. Would you want to drive? Is that how you remember it, Lakshmi?
Well, no, it's a little, we can back up maybe a day or two where you have the show. You have the show in San Francisco, so you're going there. We're going there.
Oh, yeah.
And so you decide, okay, that's a great opportunity to somehow get the stuff back. And I remember for a couple of days, you were like researching all these moving companies. And I was like, why would you hire someone? We can do it ourselves and have this road trip to look forward to on our way back. And you go, no, you don't drive. I don't drive. And I was like, we'll find a way. And then scoot to a couple of days later, we're in the studio with Theo. And I think we both realized that he drives.
And loves driving.
Loves to drive. And we've already spent, like, at this point, I think you had been in the studio every day that week.
Yeah.
So we knew that we love spending time with each other. So it wouldn't be like difficult to drive all day long with each other.
Well, it'd certainly be a good time to figure out if it would be difficult.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And you have a much better memory than I do, Lakshmi. But so it's 2017. I'm having a show called Charge Yourself at the Chandran Gallery in San Francisco. And like Lakshmi said, we were going to go to San Francisco already. And, here's a picture of the show exhibition taken by Theo called Charge Yourself. And so we were going there already, Lakshmi and I. And so we thought, well, maybe this is a good opportunity to go and rescue or bring all of that work back. So as we're shooting my inventory in the studio, I remember asking Theo, like, hey, Theo, would you want to drive me, Lakshmi, Blanche, and all of my artwork from the West Coast to the East Coast?
Yeah, I don't think I hesitated.
I remember, this is my memory. I think you said that sounds like a stupid idea, like, sure.
You said that sounds like a stupid idea, so I have to do it.
but only if I can take pictures.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We said deal.
Yeah. It was a fair trade.
Yeah.
So was this conceived from the get-go as a sort of a trip that would function for different purposes? There was the practical side, having to move your inventory from the West Coast to the East Coast, but was that idea to potentially collaborate and record and have this kind of creative exploration of the American landscape together? Did that kind of emerge at that time too, that you were all going to
it was Lakshmi's idea. My mission was just to go and get the work and come back, and Theo, being a good friend, would drive us. And then Lakshmi said, like,
we have to use this as an opportunity to like be creative. And I had driven across the country as a child, so I remember it being like really epically beautiful. We forget how beautiful America actually is, the landscape. And when Theo said, well, I'll do it if I can take photographs, I was like, great, because now we have him on board creatively. And we just have to figure out how we play a role in that process.
Yeah, I think the framework was fairly loose in terms of, we had some ideas as we talked about it some more that came up. Some were grander than others, but for the most part, it was fairly, I'll go back to the word organic. And
yeah, very organic.
If the trip was organic, the idea was organic, and by golly, we were going to go on this drive and just do what we could do without stressing about it. I think that was the big thing.
Yeah.
We didn't want to stress out. We were already driving cross country, so.
Yeah, and it just became, I remember going back to this idea, like, well, what is Shantell's like what is her ethos around her creativity? And if you look at it, it's just draw on everything. And it was like a light bulb moment. Oh, on the road, like we can get some eco-friendly, non-permanent.
Oh yeah, so I did research because, you know, I wanted to draw on the road all across the country, but I wanted to do it in a way that was sustainable and kind
and green.
And green. So
I claim it.
Yeah, so and good for the climate. So for a long time, I actually researched soluble spray paint and, you know, stuff that was good for the environment and stuff like that.
Not harmful.
So
not good,
so disclaimer: no roads were harmed in any of this work or any of these travels.
Yeah. So
no asphalt was scarred.
So I think this picture really perfectly illustrates this mantra to draw on everything. So then to think of this sort of vertical world that you're working within in gallery spaces and museum spaces, and then to kind of rethink your process to work on the ground. And I know you've done huge murals on streets and sidewalks and parking lots before. So this is equally as you're versatile so that you can sort of apply your work in all sorts of spaces. So let's take it from the gallery. Let's hit the road. Here we are.
Picking up the truck. A long and painful process to pick up a truck that was easily probably the worst pieces of machinery I had ever gotten behind the wheel of. Muffler was rusted out. I think we were grinding a gear. I don't know what was going on with that thing. It was just, oh, and yeah, and the air conditioning didn't work.
Air conditioning, day one.
So, you know, this will not be a good advertisement for U-Haul.
No, budget.
Was it budget?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. We should have used U-Haul because we used budget because we were on a budget. I was on a budget. But it ended up being the worst truck ever. You know, this is us. This is Laksmi and Blanche outside the budget rental place in Oakland, California. So that's where we started. And the first trip was through Nevada. You know, Nevada's the desert, and our air conditioning stopped working.
I remember just turning to the side at one moment, and both Shantell and Blanche looked like little puppies that had been taken out of a bath and not dried. They were just drenched in sweat.
Well, there's three of us all sitting up front for 10 hours a day. I think the total trip was like 10 days, but the first couple of days were the hardest because there was no air conditioning. I'm sitting there sweating. Blanche is there sweating. You know, I don't even know if we had windows open or not. I can't remember, but it was horrible. It was horrible. And budget wouldn't give us a new truck. So I think in the end, we checked into the hotel, found the budget rental place, and literally just started moving our stuff into a different truck. And they were like, you can't do that. And we're like, we're not driving this.
We're not driving this truck. We actually backed the two trucks up together, and this guy at the budget, like, back up that one truck to this truck, and we're gonna move everything over really quick. And it's gonna be, he was so good at making it go so fast.
Yes.
And we drove out with basically a brand new truck instead of like a falling apart truck. Like if it was a plane, you would not want to get in it. That's how bad that truck was.
Theo, do you remember where this picture is taken from?
Yeah, that is part of the first day. So that's the reject truck. Yeah. So that's weirdly enough, and I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut. That's in Fairfield, California. That's that first day that we were driving before we got the new truck, and we pulled over. The highway's just to the right, and we pulled over, and we had stopped at a hardware store because one of the key things for having the truck for me as a photographer was to gain height over a perspective over any scene. And the big thing for me was we had to buy a big ladder, and we bought a very tall ladder so that I could like climb up on top of the truck. And also this truck had really bad shocks. So getting on top of the truck was kind of scary because it would always move all the time and like move around. But in that way, whenever we stopped or we picked a place to stop that we would photograph at, while Shantell and Laksmi were figuring out what they wanted to do on the ground or where it was gonna happen, and Laksmi would be shooting video, I would be climbing up on the truck with my 8x10 camera and stuff like that. But yeah, this is day one. of the road trip. Yeah, and that's
Is an 8x10, that's a large format?
yeah, that's the large format camera. The 8x10 is literally, the film is 8x10 inches, and the camera is a large wooden box. Basically, the camera I have is 1939. It's a Deardorff. It was a very popular, it still is a very popular camera with fine artists the world over. But I would get up there and set up the camera. It has to be on a tripod. But I was shooting digital DSLR, and I was shooting an old Nikon F2 with 35 millimeter film, Tri-X film, and then this large 8x10 with both color and black and white film.
Yeah, it's funny looking at these pictures now. I have a couple of regrets about this whole trip. One of them is that we didn't drop pins, on a map.
Yes.
Where these were done.
Yeah.
Because it would have been really nice to have, to literally pinpoint these specific moments across the country. And what do you say, Theo?
No, I think I can go back because I made notes.
Oh, you did?
A lot of the individual places are.
Cool.
The only one I didn't was, I think I did. There are some files that actually have the names of the points.
Yeah.
Oh, can you share that with me?
Yes, I will. Yes.
Then I can put it on my map.
Okay.
And here we see, this is Theo climbing that big ladder with the large format camera. One thing I would have loved to have done as well. So basically, Theo is a photographer, an artist, a gallery owner, but in his own right, an historian as well for Civil War and American history. And so I learned so much on this whole trip, because every time we went through a new state, a new town, Theo gave us this wealth of knowledge of the wars or the captains or the
people who came from there who then later
explorers. Yeah,
exactly.
We should have recorded it.
Yeah, I wish I recorded all of it, because I could have made a podcast.
I can remember what I said.
We could do it again.
Yeah, we are doing it again.
Too. Even like this of going up on the roof of the truck with the camera, for me as a photographer and as a young photographer, I would have been all about Ansel Adams, which I don't really, he's still like an icon in the history of photography as an art form. But it was pretty amazing to be able to go up on that truck, because when I lived in Brooklyn, I had a big old Suburban, and I would get on top of my Suburban and dent the roof with my 8x10 camera to take photos in 1990s Brooklyn, which I have a lot of images of. But this was that same kind of functionality. It was kind of like copying the Ansel Adams aesthetic of getting on top of his vehicles to get that one extra 10 feet of perspective. And I think there's a famous photograph of him on top of a panel wagon with his 8x10 camera and stuff, like photographing like Yosemite or something like that. Or I think there's an alternate photograph of him photographing a high school group, because he said I had to make a couple of bucks here and there. But anyway. So.
I also noticed, why is Blanche on a dog leash?
Because we're on the road.
There's no cars. No one else is on the road.
Nobody drove by us.
Where is she going?
That's my paranoid mom. Self.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Blanche is glued to us, so she wouldn't have run off. There's no other cars. So yeah.
Blanche was truly the fourth member of the expedition, and I'll say expedition. Blanche and I had a very tenuous friendship that included my buying a large bag of beef jerky and sharing it with Blanche every time I grabbed it while we were driving, and I would bite off half and give Blanche half, so we could have an understanding. It was very nice.
She still looks to you for beef jerky.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's always disappointed when she doesn't get that now. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we got the air conditioning fix, or we
got a new truck.
We took a new truck, and then we were kind of on our way again. But I think looking back, we probably overdid it each day. Because on Google Maps, for example, it said it would take 7 or 8 hours to get to the next destination. But because we were in a really old, crappy truck, it took a couple of extra hours. So we thought we would be, when we looked at our schedule that day, we estimated 7 hours or 6 hours.
Yeah.
But in theory, like, well, in reality, it took 10 hours or 11 hours. And
Yeah.
so we would check into the next hotel, maybe eat something, go to sleep, and then we'll be up at 7 or 8 a.m. the next day to do it all over again. So it was quite grueling, but we would find these moments probably once or twice a day where we wanted to, you know, find the spot to draw on the road.
I remember you were like, you were less involved in that. You were like, wherever you want me to draw, I'll draw. And I think it was a lot of the time I remember being with, because I was sitting next to Theo, and I think you and I are both looking for cinematic landscapes that felt right for both shooting video, shooting stills,
Yeah.
and for the actual piece on the road that would be, it would fit all three aspects.
Yeah, there was always you wanted to find a good view, good clouds, good landscape, good contrasts, good color.
Yeah.
But we'd be driving and we'd go, oh, that looks good. And then we go, yeah, well, maybe not. And we'd move on.
But I remember when we'd find a spot, we both would have that, like, this is perfect. This is it.
Yeah, this is
the one.
This is it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So along those lines, I think the next slide is a video from day one.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, shall we launch into that?
Yes.
Here we are. Okay.
I think it's freezing a little bit, but it's okay. You'll get the idea.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting thing about, you know, this experience is, I think it's a very American experience, perhaps one of the most American experiences I've had, to, you know, literally be on the road for days and days and see how beautiful this country is. You know, there's such beautiful landscapes, and just leaving, you know, these very minuscule drawings in these beautiful landscapes, and, you know, having this moment. You know, if we were just driving, we would never stop to have these moments in these beautiful spaces, to kind of also have a moment to draw, but then to look up and see what's around us, or what was around me when I was drawing. So that was quite magical in a way.
I have to say that's absolutely true. And even having driven cross country and hitchhiked cross country, before we came on, we were talking about on the road, you know, the whole phrase on the road and where that comes from, and the Kerouac, Ginsberg crowd and all those people. But having read On the Road, even though I didn't like the book, but because the characters were just so selfish and self-absorbed, it drove me as a young man with friends of mine to hitchhike cross country. And we hitchhiked cross country via the Northwest, Canada, through the Midwest. It was just an amazing experience. I don't know if people could do that today. But so when I was talking about history, when we were driving, a lot of those histories were personal histories of events that happened while we were hitchhiking to my friends and myself, who I'm still friends with to this day. Those two gentlemen that I'm thinking of, actually 4, but they were like, it is, driving cross country is the complete, utter mental map of America. It's just a very, very, very intuitive experience when you're driving across it. This is the Donner Pass we're looking at right now,
Yeah.
crossing over toward the Midwest, over the Rockies. Is that the Rockies chain? Or I guess so, yeah, over Donner Pass.
And the thing is, you know, you can see cars, you know, in some of these, in the video and in this picture, you can see some cars, but there were some days where we drove for hours and hours and hours and hours and didn't see one other car.
And this is pre-COVID, so.
Yeah. Wyoming.
Yeah, and you know, it just shows like we forget how big this country is. And for someone like myself that has grown up and has lived in cities my whole life, it's mind-blowing to think that there are parts of this country where you can drive for 8 hours straight and not see another car or human on the road. And so I think that really puts things into perspective.
And how we had every day countless moments of just being in awe of what we were seeing.
Yeah,
We jokingly said we should have had like a buzzer on the dashboard that was like, oh my God, because it's kind of unbelievable. Unless you see it, you don't know it exists. But just like this, the Barronville.
This was our collaborative, oh my God, we all shouted at the same time. Not when we got down, this is Leppy Pass, just before Utah, and just before the Salt Flats. And when we came over the mountain and looked down into this valley and saw the Salt Flats going out in front of us, we were, all three of us, and maybe even Blanche, all like yelped.
Well, it was also the sunset. And so the Salt Flats for a good minute or two were completely pink. You were seeing this like ocean of iridescent pink. You didn't even know what it was.
Well, I thought it was the ocean. So we were going uphill, using too much gas, you know, wondering, you know, would we even make it up to the top of the hill? So we were going up the hill using more gas than we thought we should. So we thought there was something wrong with the truck. Going up. And then suddenly we all gasped because it looked like the ocean. I thought that, you know, we were looking down at thousands of miles of ocean. But then when we got closer and closer, we could see that it was salt. Yeah. And the salt, like Lakshmi was saying, was shimmering pink in the sunlight. It was so beautiful.
It was like the perfect afternoon. That was like one of the high points of our trip across country, was coming over that ridgeline and seeing the Salt Flats. This was actually before the Salt Flats, I think. Yeah. On day one. It was like I think it was our second stop, this one, which was interesting. This was really, we were still working out the bugs of stopping and taking photographs and like working things out. This is like literally a pullover in the middle of nowhere. And occasional trucks would go by. I don't even think a car went by us then. Maybe one car went by us then. And you have to realize, see, every time we stopped to do this, there was a little trepidation on our part. We literally would go, okay, we're gonna do this. And we were like, hope we don't get in trouble.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, because we were drawing with, you know, soluble kind of spray paint and stuff, but still in some of these states, you don't know what the laws are, or you don't know, you know, what people's temperaments are like. So we were also just trying to avoid all humans every time we did this. So
I felt like we were robbing a bank every time. It's just like, you know, get out. Go.
I feel like it does feel like that when you're kind of a kid and, you know, you're drawing on places where you shouldn't be. I think we did have a little bit of that type of feeling every time we did this. And then we would get in, you know, we would do it and be like, go, 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 go.
Well, it definitely created like this feeling that every day we were driving, I love that shot personally. And especially with the truck going by in the culvert.
This is extra.
There was a moment when I was hitchhiking cross country, and a friend of mine, we got dropped off at a crossroads I think in Wyoming, near Pinedale, Wyoming. And these cowgirls dropped us off at this crossroads. Long story, really great, not enough time. But we went to sleep in the middle of the night in these old army ponchos in our sleeping bags. And when we woke up in the morning, we were basically sleeping on the side of the hill like that, off the highway. And when we turned to our right and our left, there were the bleached bones of dead sheep on either side of us. And we were like, whoa, okay, this is getting intense. And this is the kind of like, it's like this beautiful and kind of almost unforgiving landscape. And to think that, you know, these ribbons of concrete and asphalt are like passing through them with ease. And we just zoom right by everything and everybody. in America is zooming by, whether they are realizing it or not. You know, I think a lot of people, they look at their own personal landscapes and hopefully they're saying, wow, I live in a beautiful place, because a lot of these places are just amazing. But yeah,
where are we now? Where is this place that we're seeing?
I believe we're still in California here.
Yeah.
This is going back a couple of days. Like Lepi Pass is the Salt Flats image is probably the next day.
No,
Near
Salt Lake City was the next day.
Yeah.
In the mountains.
Powder Ridge. Yeah.
Yeah, Powder Ridge.
Yeah. Yeah. The Salt Flats.
Salt Flats.
Yeah.
And way in the back of that image, especially from the large format negative, there's 2 cars way in the back it was 2 Asian families that were like on vacation and they were photographing themselves out in the Salt Flats. So we weren't the only ones. We had really no reason.
We did feel comfortable there. You're right. We can take our time.
Yeah, actually, people go out into the Salt Flats and write their names or collect rocks, and
you can see the tire trucks. In fact, when we were driving across the Salt Flats after this photo, as the sun was setting, and that was a beautiful drive. And when we got to the other side, and we're coming to Salt Lake City, and it's just, I don't know. We should have had some kind of soundtrack, like a Rycooter or something. I don't know. Something very ambient going on, because it really was mystical in a way. Even it was just beautiful. But when we were driving across the Salt Flats, there were people that had driven out onto the Salt Flats and had to get towed off.
Yeah,
there were tow trucks there pulling them out of the salt, because I can't imagine what that would do to the metal of the underside of your vehicle, but rust is the first thing that I can think of.
Yeah, so I think everyone's tempted because they see all these tire marks on the Salt Flats. So lots of people get tempted to go out there and drive really fast and stuff. But like Theo said, people get stuck out there.
It was just a vast landscape. But that was the thing, like the Lepi Pass image, which we saw the black and white of, where the Donner Party went through. It was such a fantastic vista. It was impossible to photograph.
What's a vista?
One still image. What's that?
What's a vista?
Oh, the whole view of like Lepi Pass, like the whole wide view of it. It was really difficult to really get a sense of that with
the camera.
Yeah, with a still camera anyway. Video would do it much better, but
it looked like it was almost like a Riddick film. Like it should have been like a sci-fi.
Yes. Poster. Here we go. This is our view every day for 7 days or 8 days.
Yes.
Although when we got to the East Coast, it got a little more predictable with trees and stuff. And
yeah.
You mentioned music, Theo, and Shantell, I know how sort of pivotal music is in your creative process and your creative output. Was there a soundtrack? I mean, was there a tape player? Could you get the radio? Were you just turning the local station?
You know, tell me if I'm wrong, both of you, but I think we would just listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, it's podcasts.
Yeah. We did listen to a lot of podcasts. Yeah.
We would listen to a lot of podcasts and then listen to a lot of Theo.
Yeah. And then like nothing, like I remember it was a very organic, like going from podcast to listening to Theo to tell us stories to then like really conversational about what we were seeing. Like I feel like we all were able to be very present on that trip, and it was a collective presentness.
I think we had lots of moments of just listening, even just to the landscape. We would stop sometimes just to smell sage, and stuff like that, and or to let Blanche take a break, or for all of us to take a break. But there was some music we played. I think I was stuck on like a Boccherini, like
oh yeah, I think
Noah
so.
DeGamba music at the time, and that was something I liked. That was totally out of keeping. This is in Powder Ridge. This image. Shantell had set up a meeting with a local curator at this ski resort. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, this is our friend with the cap on. That's Marshall. He's a photographer and kind of a lover of the arts. And he was, I think, working or having a residency in Eden, in Utah, Salt Lake City. And so this was interesting because we thought we would do a diversion. I think it was almost a 4-hour diversion up the mountains to, you know, spend, I think, 2 nights in one place, because up until this point, we'd only been spending 1 night. So we spent 2 nights here. It will be a time to just really, you know, relax, take a breath. But I think in Salt Lake, for some reason, we had issues with the truck. There was a weird noise, clanging noise with the truck. And it was getting later and later and later, and it was dark, and we were in Salt Lake City. And then we're starting to drive up this mountain in pitch black for hours and hours and hours up this mountain, not really knowing that we were going in the right place, not knowing that the truck would even get us there. Yeah. And we finally made it. We slept at Marshall's place, and then we woke up the next day and we were
in paradise.
We were, you know, up the top of a mountain, you know, which we had no idea where we were before, because we drove up this hill the night before in pitch black.
Yeah, you can get a sense of it through the windows of this as yet unfinished residence that this ski resort was building, and the views were amazing from up there. I was really, really impressed. The last time I was that impressed was backpacking over the Rockies, but that was pretty amazing. And yeah, it was just a piece of metal in the truck or something that we had in the truck that was banging, right? Or something.
We didn't know what it was. It was just clanging. There was some clanging. Yeah, so this is at the top of the mountain.
Yeah. This was one of those epic moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. This might have been my favorite view out of the whole trip.
Yeah.
You can get a sense of it there, but there were just layers and layers of mountains going on forever. Like, we were so high up.
Yeah.
And Marshall had a drone, so we were able to get some drone shots of this drawing, but it was absolutely breathtaking.
Marshall sacrificed his drone that day.
Yeah. I remember the clouds. It'd be like this in 1 minute, and then in 5 minutes later, it'd be like just bright blue.
Yeah, this is literally just minutes after I took the large format film. The great thing about shooting the large format film, is that it has, even by digital standards, such a high resolution that you can pick up all those layers and the depth of it once you look at the photographs up close. It's when I saw that negative, I was just like, oh yeah, we hit the jackpot on that.
It looks like we're all taking pictures here. Laksmi's taking a picture, I'm taking a picture, you're taking a picture.
I think the drone is up in the air at this point or something.
Yeah.
It did a nosedive soon after that.
This is the day I remember the clouds were like soldiers.
Yeah.
Hours of just these incredibly beautiful clouds that I feel like we'd never seen before, or something.
This was part of this kind of endless landscape that we were on, that there was no other cars. Like, we would take a road and then we'd be on that road for a while, and then we go, okay, we felt like we were making direct progress, but it was just, you can see it, the road just goes, it's just a ribbon that just goes on and on and on.
Is this Wyoming? The big, like the Western Wyoming?
I'm going to say Western Wyoming, yeah.
Do you think this road trip changed either of you in any way?
What's that?
Do you think this road trip changed you in any way?
Yeah, I think this, when we were driving, we were talking about different art things, and I was talking about how I viewed my photography, and how in the past I'd always been searching for like some kind of like, or you're taught to obtain this level of perfection technically. And I started to realize that technical perfection was just completely meaningless, and that, and in the end, it's that some of the negatives got damaged, but, you know, digitally speaking, you know, it was easy. The landscape it was like photographing a perfect thing. The landscape just presented itself all the time in this beautiful hues and colors that even the cameras could certainly duplicate, but it was, yeah. So you see the damage around this image. This is in Wyoming, in Western Wyoming, or it was, yeah, I'm going to say it was. And this is even an unretouched image, because you can see spots in it and dust spots, and all that edge burning is from an accident that happened in the lab. And I think about somebody like Robert Capa, the combat photographer who landed on the beaches of D-Day, and he lands with his cameras and he insisted on being in the first wave, and he gets all these photographs at the risk of his own life and absolutely makes out okay with, well, you know, thousands of other people had died. He sends all of his film back to the ship, to the lab, and the lab destroyed everything but one roll of film.
Oh my God.
And you're like, and then you realize you can't just like collapse in on one mistake. You have to keep rolling. And I think that's what I was learning from you, Shantell, was that you don't have to, you know, stop at that one accident. You gotta kind of like, no perfect plan, no plan you can make survives first contact.
Yeah.
You know,
And you know, it's funny you referred to that previous, you know, as damage, but I think it looks quite beautiful, you know, so even beautiful. Here I think that damage makes it, you know,
I remember
so much character.
The first time showing you these images which was a bit after the trip, and your reaction was so freaking awesome to like the colors in these images. And to me, they're absolutely the best photographs I had made up to that point in my career as an artist and as a photographer. So it showed me that there are ways to realize what you're seeing. That trip showed me there were ways to realizing what you were seeing or pre-visualizing without the drawback of judging yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I think it was really a journey of being very intuitive and inspired by what you have available, what's right in front of you, and not trying to manipulate it in any way, just trying to position yourself like, just pull over on the side of the road, take a picture. And it's, you know, it's that simple, really.
I think it's really interesting too, because everywhere, with the exception of like the top of Powder Ridge or like by the Salt Flats, most of the places we chose to take photographs were fairly inconsequential. And there is a point at which where we got to, do we want to talk about Mount Rushmore?
Oh my God, yes.
I didn't see any photographs of Mount Rushmore.
No, you didn't.
There's a reason.
Yeah, there was a very good reason. Shantell, you want to take that?
Well, you know, Mount Rushmore, as a non-American, but, you know, have spent many, many, many years living here. The bulk of my career has been living in America. You know, Mount Rushmore is one of these symbols that really represents America from the outside and the inside. And I've only ever seen pictures of it or seen it in movies. And so I was so excited to see it because it's always been this giant, you know, there's helicopters by it. And I thought it would be, I would have this epic experience witnessing this thing in real life. And so the day we're going to get to Mount Rushmore, I'm so excited because I really wanted to see it and experience it. But we got closer and closer and closer. You know, we're seeing all of these signs, Mount Rushmore, like 10 miles away, 1 mile away. And then we pull around this corner. And this is the most disappointed perhaps I've ever been in my life. It's so small. It's so small. And there's a car park in front of it. There's literally a car park. It looks like a supermarket car park. And then there's these like little guys' faces on these small rocks. Yeah. And so I felt really deceived and I felt really disappointed that it just shows you it's all about perspective. And so all of these movies and all of these photographs where you see it and it's these giant rock faces, it's because they've chosen a select perspective to take those and show those. And no one ever has really shown this true perspective of a little car park and then these like little rocks.
Well, it was, it was like we were on a bad date. It was like really horrible.
I know. He said, keep driving.
Oh yeah, I did. We didn't stop.
No, it was the opposite of seeing the Salt Flats. We all came around the corner. We're like, oh yeah, okay.
I said, keep driving, Theo. Don't stop. Keep driving, and we went straight to the hotel. I was so disappointed.
So if Mount Rushmore was the great disappointment, were the Salt Flats the great surprise?
Totally.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
and
it's
then
like
also the little moments, like I don't know if you have an image of it, one of my favorite images is Shantell drawing on the railroad tracks next to
Oh,
the
I think
railroad
that's in
tracks.
here. Yeah.
Oh,
This
There
one,
we go. Boom.
which we had actually stopped before this. We had already done a photo before this. This is in Idaho, and we had found this beautiful cornfield, and we had stopped and we had done video. And
Well, Idaho all looked the same. It was
Yeah,
cornfields and
definitely
cornfields and
looked the
cornfields and yeah.
but I remember when we saw this. I saw this to the left of us as we were driving, and I was like, we have to go back. We have to we have to get close to that railway track. And when we hit this moment, I just remember having this this is stunning. Also because if you think of the Great American Road Trip and how it used to be the Great American Railroad and how that has changed so much about America on so many levels. So I really love the dichotomy of having the railroad and the road side, just converging.
Right.
So yeah, Mount Rushmore didn't even compare to this small little moment that we had,
Yeah, that was a particularly beautiful moment. That was so low key. I didn't even bother getting up on the truck or anything. It was just literally load up the camera and take a photograph, and the rail line, the road, having hitchhiked cross country, traveling by boxcar. And you never get as dirty as when you travel in a boxcar on a train. But this was a very, very good image. Beautiful image. Yep. Yeah.
so these interventions in the landscapes, would these be relatively brief, a few moments, or would you spend extended time there? And while you were there, were there ever any voyeurs? Did people, when there were cars, did they ever stop and kind of observe you working and ask questions?
There was a truck that passed us when we were at this location, and we let him keep going before we started doing anything. But I'm gonna say that we were really it's like we were on it. We would determine where the location was, we decide what needed to happen, and we do it. And I think the longest we would be there is probably 30 minutes in any one spot,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we thought it was just best to avoid people because you never know, you know. So yeah, so 10, 20, 30 minutes, like Theo said.
Yeah, this is that was in, oh yeah. So much fun.
So much fun. Blanche.
Oh
This
yeah.
was the first stop, I think. Yeah.
This is no, this is actually after we left Chicago, I think.
Oh, really?
We're on our way to Chicago, one or the other, because it was, to me, this was signified like we're getting to a point in the trip where we're like, okay, it's time to get home. It's
Pittsburgh and Chicago. We were ready to be home by then.
Yeah.
It just wasn't as pretty though. The East.
Yeah, that's definitely Chicago. Theo was magnificently underdressed for this trip.
We did stop and get deep pan pizza in Chicago.
Yes. This is
where we found
the rocks.
The rocks.
Yeah. This is on Lake Michigan, and is it Lake Michigan? It is Lake Michigan, right?
Yeah.
My geography is failing me, but yeah, we found this big car park, and people were in their cars partying. I remember people were like literally hanging out in their cars partying, and it was like a Sunday or something. I remember. Yeah.
You look very upbeat for having been on the road for a week at this point together.
Yeah, I think after a while you just get used to it. But yeah, we were definitely ready for home. But I think by this point we were in the flow. We'd been doing it long enough.
Yeah, it was almost like, okay, if we had a line producer, we would have been way ahead of them in terms of working on this. It's also, I have to say, having been on road trips and driven with other people across country, aside from long moments of silence and, maybe the depression of looking at the same landscape for like hours on end, we had an incredibly good time sitting in the front of that truck together. And I think it was mostly because of the organic nature of the whole trip, of that we didn't plan this out rock solid. The only rock solid thing we had was the itinerary that that Shantell had developed for us for the drive back, which
Very organized.
if we didn't have that, we probably would have taken way too long to get back. And
yeah, I think it was funny because when it did finally come to an end, we were actually all quite sad in a way, because
I had withdrawals.
we spent 10 days together, most of, pretty much all of that day in a very small confined space, and we all enjoyed each other's company. And so it's an extreme to go from 10 days seeing each other all the time in a very small kind of cockpit to like being able to do your own thing and not see each other. So I was actually really sad when it all came to an end.
Yeah, I'm a very emotional person. So I would make a horrible photojournalist, because when I become emotional about something, I stop taking photographs. So I think the last day of driving all the way to New Jersey, I think, right? We got all the way to New Jersey.
Here?
From
Michigan.
This is in Chicago.
Okay.
And this is the last day we were there, last morning we were there, and we hit the road right after this, didn't we? I think we did. Yeah. And we drove immediately. We made a beeline for New Jersey after that. We stayed at one more place in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's what we did. And I think in Pennsylvania, we decided we were done.
Yeah, we were ready. We were ready to go.
We were ready. We were all done. Yeah.
But it's kind of incredible that even though the trip itself, the journey ended, you've had really great opportunities to kind of revisit and continue drawing from that experience in this show, which was presented just a couple years back in 2019 or 2018, was it?
At the end of 2018.
Yeah.
2018. So can you talk about how you talk about the works that sort of culminated from this trip? So this trip comes to a close, 10 days on the road together, but you've got all this footage to sort through. You've got your videos and your photographs, and to kind of sort through and have those images crystallize and be able to see sort of what rises to the top in terms of, capturing the most beautiful vistas or the most sweeping moments, or those instances where you're really, expressing that line on the pavement in a way that you find really satisfying. What was that like, or how did that come together?
Yeah, like I wasn't really a part of that in a way, because Laksmi had taken all the video, Theo had taken all the photos, and in a way my job was done. So it was a little bit more of a curation part on their side.
Yeah, I'm going to say too that Theo, I am a little bit slow in the uptake sometimes. So it took a little while. This trip was in 2017, and it wasn't until midway through the beginning of 2018 that I finally showed the images that I had to Shantell and Laksmi. I think part of that was because of the lab accident that I had in Manhattan at my favorite lab. It was one of those moments that every photographer dreads, and they happen. They literally happen. Like film gets exposed to like a fluorescent light, and you get this happy accident in the end. But when I finally brought the images to Shantell and showed them to her, I was thinking of doing an exhibition, and I just started Standard Space just months before, like in September of 2017, so just months before. And I was still trying to think of what form the mission of the gallery was taking. And being a small gallery in the northwest corner of Connecticut, there's a lot of push for the gallery to be a very local gallery. And having worked with a lot of, famous artists and working with Shantell, my view is a bit more of a worldview rather than like a local view. And while there are some amazing artists in the northwest corner in Connecticut and in New York State, Massachusetts, which are very close to me, there's Wasaic projects. I've done collaborations with them. There are some, I want to keep the scope of the gallery much broader. And this was kind of like the perfect fit because it was a cross-country trip with an artist who has made her home America from, you know, immigrating twice, you know, once from Britain to Japan, and then from Japan to the United States. And then there's Lakshmi's worldview, because she lived in a foreign country for a very long time in India, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then it's a collaboration, and it's not just a collaboration between artists, it's a collaboration between friends. And it's just this shared experience that needed to have at least one opportunity to be shown to other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I came about it in a lackadaisical way.
and you know, it's your photography as well. So, you know, why not show it in your own space and give yourself that spape?
Yeah. The opening show at Standard Space was actually my landscape photography that I'd started doing when I moved up here, and I'm still doing now, and really enjoying every moment of it.
And it's, you know, I'll finish off on my part. I'm going to disappear, but you know, it's also so nice to see this work, this collaborative work from us all, have new life in, you know, the New Britain Museum. So, you know, it's so nice that we can now revisit them and those memories and those moments again by going to see, you know, the new Now show and seeing these up close and personal. So it's so nice that, you know, this is something that we did in 2017, but it still continues to have this life, and it still continues to have these new chapters, which is really exciting to see.
It's still on the road.
It's still on the road, yes.
And I'm pushing for a part 2 where we go east to west, but take the southern route.
Yeah.
Oh, Theo. I know how to drive now, so we can share responsibility.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful too to have this actually migrate over, you know, this aspect of Shantell's retrospective to be included in the show at the New Britain Museum is a really great honor, and I really enjoyed taking part in this conversation. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
It's been so meaningful to spend time with all of you in conversation. I've learned so much from you, and it's really been a joy and pleasure to become friends through this exhibition. And I think today's program was great because it's really explored, you know, traveling through the American landscape, but also just this aspect of friendship, of collaboration, and also just coincidentally, this notion of American traditions, given that it is Inauguration Day. We had our president.
Happy Inauguration Day.
About 2 hours
We
ago.
did it.
And,
notice that Trump was photographed next to a lot of pictures of Mount Rushmore. So I think our judgment on Mount Rushmore was a good call.
And I think, you know, I think this program will be so enjoyed by, you know, so many folks who have been a bit homebound through this pandemic. Travel is something that, you know, has been prohibitively difficult to undertake during these many months. And so for you to be able to share your experiences with us so that we can travel vicariously along with you has been so fun. I have still so many more questions for you, so much more I want to learn. But I know we're reaching to a little over an hour. So, you know, perhaps this can be the first of other programs. I see we have a chat. Oh, thank you, Elaine. So glad you were able to join. I do want to.
Does anyone have questions?
Attendees, yes, and an opportunity if they are interested in chiming in with any questions. Feel free to input any questions in the chat box.
Shantell has a meeting right now she has to pop to, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, I'm okay too. I had lunch.
Why don't we do another 5 minutes if that's okay? Just in case
absolutely.
anybody wants to chime in. I was curious myself, having never done, having lived in the United States all my life, but never done the quintessential American road trip. Where can you sort of describe the journey you traveled so that we can kind of picture in our minds the itinerary that you took?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started in Oakland, California, and then we went to Nevada. Did we go to Reno? Was it Reno that day?
Yes. Yeah.
Reno?
That's where we got the new van. That's where we got the new van. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we drove to Salt Lake City, Utah, up to Powder Mountain, spend 2 days or 1 night and 1 day, 2 nights, 1 day. And then we went through Utah all the way up to Wyoming, which was an epic drive.
Yeah.
A little depressing because you start to see on the western side of Wyoming a lot of, I think it's fracking, and you can.
Yeah, there was a lot of fracking. There was also, I think, a uranium mine at some point.
Yeah, and you can just see how the earth is dying, and you literally go from seeing green to seeing gray. So that was one of the things that I learned. There's such a stark contrast to the landscape when you are doing these earth killing things. Like it literally looked like a graveyard. So then Wyoming up to South Dakota. Was it South Dakota? South Dakota, through Idaho, up to Illinois, Chicago.
I think South Dakota is where Shantell does the drawing in black spray paint.
Yeah.
Which is probably appropriate in South Dakota.
Yeah.
The Badlands. Yeah.
The Badlands. The Badlands did feel very magical. I felt like there was this energy about it that was unshakable and very
highway wise, Route 90 is your I-90 is your favorite.
One thing.
Go ahead, Laksmi.
I was gonna say is another thing that I learned about myself and America is there are these food deserts. I'm a vegetarian, and it was really hard to eat in certain areas. Healthy food. So hopefully 2021 we can with the new administration we can work on curing food deserts in America.
I found it was difficult to get a Manhattan in the Midwest.
See, we have different goals.
Yes.
That was something that was really, really apparent, is like just healthy food was so hard to find in certain states.
Kaylin asked us the question, what did you learn about yourselves and each other through this adventure? Patience?
Patience. We're very patient.
Yeah.
I remember there was one day that I was like, are you guys sick of me yet? And the answer was no. And I just felt so happy. And I felt so like, we were all ourselves throughout this complete journey.
Yeah.
I learned that Theo was highly entertaining. Like he made history highly entertaining. And if we could do that for children when they're in school, that would probably, that knowledge.
I would love teaching at university, but there's there.
And then Shantell, what did you learn about me and Shantell, Theo?
I think, oh my God, being raised a Roman Catholic male in suburban America in the 1970s and 80s, or 1970s, the 80s were like the disassembly of that in my life, was people are amazing from no matter where they're from. Also having lived overseas and participated in other cultures, like having been to Japan, Britain, I lived in Hungary for a while. And the one thing that pains me to see today is that people are so vehemently upset with each other in American politics. And sometimes I want to lay the blame at a lack of movement in people's lives. Like they don't go to other places to see other things so that they can go home and look at what they have and go, this is awesome. I love where I am, and I love these neighbors and I love these people over here. And I love, that restaurant and this, having these different things come into your life is something that I don't know I would have been able to appreciate my friendship with Shantell and Laksmi as much if I had never gone anywhere in my life. We never would have met.
Yeah.
I don't think. So to be able to open yourself up to new experiences and friends and make friends with people, something I've always really enjoyed doing, but to develop friendships and dialogues with people is a gift that one should always try to exercise. And that trip, that, you know, those days boxed up in our little metal box, driving cross country, and even the moment when we landed in Jersey City at Mana Contemporary and parked in this cavernous garage with like, felt like an episode of Star Wars. It was really weird. You're like, this is like, this whole journey is just epic, and it just opens my eyes up to more and more opportunities, but not only just opportunities, more and more experiences that make the whole journey of moving forward that much more adventurous. And to develop a friendship with Shantell, and then with Laksmi, and with Blanche, you know, and even having left Brooklyn and being out of what the cauldron of the arts, you know, in New York, and being up here, I don't feel disassociated from that anymore because of these types of friendships, because they're not friendships of blatant opportunity. They're friendships of real strength. And you can be honest. When you can be honest with the people you're working with, I think that's the most rewarding thing. Yeah, you know, I can go on.
Well, I want to, you know, I'm so thrilled that we have an opportunity to bring so much insight to these works that are in the New Now Shantell Martin show. And Theo, again, thank you so much for generously lending us some of the work. And, you know, it's wonderful to make your acquaintance too, so that when we're through this, you know, COVID quarantine, you know, we'll certainly encourage folks to come out and visit your space, Standard Space in Sharon, Connecticut.
Thank you very much.
Your work. And we're so excited to see what comes out of, what more comes out of your friendship, your collaboration, and your individual sort of output and creative processes. So I'm so grateful to you for spending this time with the New Britain Museum of American Art today. And for
everybody
those,
go see Shantell's show.
yes. And New Now, Shantell Martin is up through April 18th. And I encourage everyone who is tuning in today to come to the museum, sign online, purchase your time ticketed reservation in advance. And it's a really wonderful, inspiring place to be right now when we kind of need it. So we've certainly, all of us at the museum have benefited so much from spending time with you, with Shantell's work, with your collaborative pieces. So I just want to thank you. Thanks to Shantell as well off screen. All that you have brought to us today, for sharing all this richness and conversation, these wonderful images. And let's do this again sometime, okay?
Definitely. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you so much to the whole New Britain family. And we're looking forward to coming up again and seeing the show and just spending more time with you. So thank you so much.
Maybe it won't rain next time.
Yes.
Take care. Thank you.